There's so much information on the internet. The hardest part is actually putting it all together into almost like a path or a trajectory as to like, these are the steps that I need to take in this order. And so the book is written in kind of an order of what I recommend as to how you can actually get your first deal. Like, why do you want to get into real estate? What is your why? What is the reasoning? What are your goals? You know, like choosing a strategy that really suits what you want to do. You have to figure out like your goals and your why first.
This is your Real Estate Syndication Show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, I have a guest on that I know you are going to learn so much from. If you are struggling to take that step to get started in real estate, she's an expert in helping you do just that. Her name is Ashley Kehr. She's the host of the Real Estate Rookie Bigger Pockets podcast. She has a number of degrees in accounting. She's going to tell you about how she got started in accounting but hated it and then transitioned to real estate very quickly, buying her first rental property, but then growing to 130 plus now. So she has a book where she's helping a number of people get started in real estate as well. Author, Real Estate Rookie, 90 Days to Your First Investment. She's done a number of other things, but you're going to hear today how you can gain that confidence. You can build a team. You can make it happen and get started in real estate. Ashley, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on. I know you are an expert in helping others even get started with their first rental, really getting into this space. I'm looking forward to diving in because I know many listeners are in those shoes that, man, what do I do? Oh my goodness, are so nervous about making all these things happen. It's overwhelming, but we're going to get into that. But first, I know, you had to walk through a lot of that as well at one point, right? And take some risk and step forward. Give us a little bit of background there, a few details, and maybe some of those hurdles you had to overcome to getting those first few deals done.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I started out actually graduating from college as an accountant, and I hated it. I lasted 6 months, and I'm like, I cannot sit at a desk every day. So I ended up putting in my 2 weeks notice, and I was just going to have a baby and be a stay-at-home mom. But about a week into my unemployment, I was talking with the dad of one of my high school friends, and he said, I just need somebody to get me organized. And that kind of led into a property management position that I could work from home. It was very flexible hours. So I started to do that. And that's where I really saw the power of real estate and what it can do. He would go and refinance properties to buy businesses with that refinance of the cash out. So it was really interesting to me. And I ended up approaching his son and said, we need to do this. Let's partner and buy a duplex. So we looked at one duplex and we bought that first duplex. From there, I continued to work as a property manager and we started to build our own portfolio. It was convenient in a sense that I was doing this as my day job. I was helping this person acquire properties. I was managing the properties. And then I was also able to do this for myself too. So that's kind of how I got started into it. I started working in the world of real estate investing.
Sounds like you had a built-in mentor.
Yes.
That had to be so helpful. I just think back about, all the fears of, oh my goodness, am I making the right decision? How do I know how to do this? Well, there's so many aspects of it, right, that you just don't know in the beginning. But having somebody like that you can just ask questions to, it just speeds things up in a big way. Is that what you experienced?
Well, actually, no, because this was just something his brother had gotten him into. It was a 40-unit apartment complex, and he had another main business that he was focused on. So he really, as far as like how to move money around, how to, acquire capital, how to be logistic in that way, he was very, very intelligent and smart as to how to make deals happen. So I definitely learned a lot on the acquisition side of things. But as far as like how to manage a 40-unit apartment complex, he had no idea. I had no idea. So I had to learn everything. My first day, I was so nervous. I was going to mess up recording someone's rent check. I took a copy of everyone's rent check before I deposited it so I could go back and double check that I entered it into the bookkeeping correctly. So it took me a long time to actually learn everything there was about being a property manager. I was kind of just thrown into it, but it was great being able to kind of run its course like with somebody else who, could kind of guide me in other ways. But yeah, he definitely has been a mentor to me. And I actually dedicated my first book that I wrote to him too.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I know a real estate rookie, 90 days to your first investment, and you highlight or outline really rapid entry, right? Or how to do that, how to really get started fast. Why don't let's talk about some of those maybe core principles or strategies that you outline there, so the listener knows what to expect, but also to help them today take some action.
Yeah, and that's really the biggest thing is taking action. And there's so much information on the internet, free stuff. You can go to the Bigger Pockets forums, you can read, you can, listen to podcasts. The hardest part is actually putting it all together into almost like a path or a trajectory as to like, these are the steps that I need to take in this order. And I think that is the hardest part, is not actually sitting down and writing out a plan as this is how I'm going to buy my first property. And these are the steps that I need to take. So the book is written in kind of an order of what I recommend as to how you can actually get your first deal. Like the first thing is, why do you want to get into real estate? What is your why? What is the reasoning? What are your goals? Like actually choosing a strategy that actually suits you, because you could pick like, oh, short-term rentals, they seem to be making a lot of money. But then you could realize I do not like, messaging with guests when there's a problem, or, going back with all the communication and scheduling the cleaners. Like that is not my thing. I thought real estate investing was passive. Choosing a strategy that really suits what you want to do. You have to figure out like your goals and your why first. And then from there, it goes on to, what's your budget? How, are you getting pre-approved? How are you financing the deal? Finding your market based off of your budget as to what you can afford. So if I'm pre-approved, or maybe I have cash saved of $100,000, I'm not going to be able to choose San Francisco as my market to invest in. It's not enough, not even for a down payment there. Like the book kind of gives you those steps as to like where to start, where to go next throughout your real estate investing journey.
What's the biggest hurdle you see most that keep most from moving forward?
We call them the puzzle pieces. And Tony Robinson and I talk about this a lot for partnerships too, as to, there's usually 4 things you need to get started. And the first one is like confidence. You don't have like this fear of getting started. And I definitely had a fear, and that's why I chose partner. Capital. You need some sort of capital. Even if you're getting a no money down deal, you still need reserves in place, So then the next one is knowledge, experience. Maybe you don't, have, anything about investing, and you're just starting out your research. So that's holding you back because you feel like you don't know enough. Then the next one is time. Like you just don't have time to analyze deals, things like that. So those are usually one of those things are the big hurdle. And for me, it was capital. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And I also was afraid. I was scared that worst case scenario, the roof was going to blow off. The tenants were going to fall down the stairs and sue me the day we closed on the property. So I took on a partner to kind of like ease that. He had a lot of reserves. I also knew he had connections. Like if the roof did fall off, we could call his contractor friend to come in and, look at it and assess with it. So it also wasn't as scary doing it by myself at that time.
And almost finding a partner or somebody to almost like a battle buddy, I call it, right? These things don't seem as scary all of a sudden, right? You got somebody else you can bounce these ideas and things off of. A lot of those there, right? The knowledge and experience could be from somebody else. The capital reserves, that could be a partner, right? And just gaining confidence as well through that person. Now, even the time piece, man, that is such a struggle. For me, I feel like it's always a struggle, right? Looking at the calendar and man, how am I going to really focus on what's most important, right? What is that next thing that I really need to be dialed in on? And what am I going to cut out that's taking time away from the most important things, right? And so early on like that, what would you say is the really the top thing though that's holding that person back? Is it capital? Is it confidence? Maybe I feel like confidence is such a big deal because of these other things you can go find.
Yeah, people get stuck in analysis paralysis. where they're not confident in analyzing the deal, or they're not confident it's a good deal. And at some point you can only, learn so much, where the other things you're going to need to learn from that hands-on experience. So you need to actually buy the deal to learn the rest of the stuff that comes along with investing in real estate.
I know now you're managing over 130 units and maybe a campground or something as well that you have?
No, just 2 short-term rentals, but we do have 130 units under management. Yeah.
So speak to, some of your systems that you have now that you've grown into, and how you're managing some of those. So even the listener can think about, hey, this is kind of where I'm going, or this is what I can foresee, and how quickly or how long they should see implementing something like that.
Yeah. So the investor that I worked for, and then myself, we kind of built out a property management company where we had both of our units, under this company together. And then it started to get too much for me. I was overwhelmed. I was working way more than I wanted to. And he was pretty passive as far as the property management side. I ended up hiring a third-party property management company, and we gave them all of our properties. And that lasted for about 3 years. And it was a horrible experience. It was awful. And so we decided, okay, we need to bring it back in-house again. And I knew I could not do it the same way I was doing it before, where I was doing everything. I had somebody help me part-time with just entering payables and receivables, but that was it. So this next time around, I really had to figure out, what can I outsource? And one of the biggest solutions to that was having virtual assistants. So I hired a virtual assistant who would do all tenant communication. So we set up a Google Voice number. All the tenants would, contact that number for any issues. And so anything that could be done through the property management software on the back end, this VA was doing it. And then I had another VA that just worked a couple hours a week that actually entered in payables and receivables. So she's kind of grown from that position now to doing more stuff. But just when I first started it, she was just doing a couple hours. And it kind of gave me that checks and balances, where it wasn't just one VA that was seeing all the incoming mail, that was entering the payables, and then setting them up for me to pay. So that was one aspect I still did, was I actually saw everything, and then I would hit the button to actually pay the payables. So there still was some oversight, but that was the biggest thing for me, is setting up the virtual assistants. I did not have every task, everything set for them right away. There definitely was a period of time of okay, now I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you this. But also as time grew, my main VA, she actually started to take more and more initiative, which was amazing. She would just say, I think I could start doing this. Do you want me to take it over? Or let's do it this way. I think this would be more beneficial, which is great in, any aspect, because a lot of times your employee is the one that's actually experiencing your system and going through it. So they're more often likely to find those, breaks in the system, or inefficiencies. So that was the biggest thing, is to hiring virtual assistants, because in property management, there is so much stuff that can be done virtually now with all of the software, the lease signing, the maintenance request submittal, everything can kind of be done on the back end. The only thing that the VA was unable to do was obviously maintenance requests, so the handyman work, but also showings. We did try out for a little bit of putting lock boxes and then sending people the codes to do self showings. And it just was not, we did not like it. It got to the point where people were showing up at midnight to come and look at a property, and the other people living in the building were this is kind of strange and weird. So we had just the maintenance guy just open the units for people, and then they could go in and, tour themselves or whatever. And then they would, contact to say, yes, we'd like an application. And then the VA would send it to them and everything, and start the actual leasing process. We gave more responsibility to the maintenance person, and they were kind of the boots on the ground.
Speak to where you're hiring your VAs from, and maybe just a few high level things that have helped you to be successful in hiring VAs.
Yeah. So the one that's kind of part-time is from BPM Solutions. So this website is almost like Upwork or Fiverr, where you post a job description and then people can apply. And you could hire someone full-time, part-time for, as needed basis for just one project, which I really like that you don't have to commit full-time. So that's where I found the one. And then the other one is from Scale Virtually, where most of the time you pretty much have to hire someone full-time. But they have like an additional service where they help with the onboarding and training of the VA, where they actually hand the VA off to you. They do all the hiring. And then the VA is also, is monitored how they're progressing, how their work is. The company is constantly checking in. So the VA is actually employed by that company, and then you are charged by that company. So they kind of actually manage it. But we have that person full time.
What other things now, are you handing to VAs that, you didn't know that they could even do, earlier on?
So I guess like one of the biggest things is the mail. Like I never thought that I would have to, or like that I wouldn't be able to have this huge stack of mail, paper cuts as I'm cutting them open and like scanning them in. Like I always thought I'd have to have somebody in person, which I did for a little bit. Have somebody that would get the mail from the PO box. They would open it all. They would scan it and then put it into our payable system. Well, I learned of a virtual mailbox. So we use post-scan mail, but there's a bunch of them. I think one is called like virtual mailbox even, or mailbox anytime. All of our mail is sent to, it's almost like a shipping center, a little storefront that they have that, packages FedEx, UPS, and does all kinds of mail for you. So located near us, and you can find all different locations wherever through post-scan mail. They'll tell you whoever works with them. So we found one that, was in like 20 minutes of my house. And so they receive all my mail, they open the mail, and they scan it in for me. So I have a login, and then my VA has a login where at any time we can go in and look at the mail that we received. Then we have the options of what to do with it. So we can recycle it, we can shred it, we can forward it. So like we still have people that pay with rent checks. So if we have a rent check, I can just forward it right to my house, and then I can make the deposit. So then we have, or she can download what the scan is and enter it into the payable, or download it and save it into our Google Drive if it's something that we need. That was just like a huge thing. So now I have a Google Sheet that lists for each entity. If this is a bank statement, this is where you file it. If this is an invoice that needs to be paid, this is where you file it. If this is automatic payment and this is the bill, this is what you do with it. It's like a little SOP list on like, if this is that, then do this for any possible thing you could think of. And if there's something new that comes up, she forwards me the email and says just, hey, this is what came in. What would you like me to do with it? And then we add to the list for next time we know, like, okay, if this comes in, then do this. And it's also nice because at any time, we save them, I think, for 30 days in there before anything is deleted out of there, just to save on storage costs. But I can go in at any time and I can just like glance through like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't remember seeing this as a payable, and just kind of like as a double check for things. But really, it's been just like an amazing system of not having to open the mail. But I always learned from the person that had mentored me that I worked for was he always opened the mail. And he did that because he always wanted to see what was incoming into his business. So I still like that I still have that checks and balances of being able to log in at any time and look and see what's going on.
It's life-changing not to have to open all your mail.
Yeah, it is.
So, that's a process right there that you just outlined, right? I've got a Google Doc that says, do this, do this, do this, right? Speak to implementing some systems and processes that have helped you. Maybe the process of how you've documented systems and processes to help VAs or other employees that, you didn't know to do it this way, or maybe you wish you had have known to document systems this way years ago. How do you do that now?
Yeah, so I started off like the first ever SOP I made was how to do a bank reconciliation. So it was literally just a Word document, and I wrote out each of the steps. You log into the bank, you go here, you pull the bank statement, then you go here and you enter and that whole thing. And I did those for each of the entities and each of the bank accounts. But from there, I've learned that there's way easier things to do it. So Loom is a big one where you can screen record, you can talk. You can have it so your face is on there while you're talking to and just recording your process. So I do that a lot, especially for like really quick things of like, oh, here's how you go in and you change the password for this or something like that. And then we save all of those also too in a Google Sheet. So it's like, here's how to pay the water bill. And then it's either the Loom video or that we also use Tango too to write out some of the SOPs. Here's the Tango for it. And then who updated it last, the date and their name on it too. So we have just like a whole general SOP list of like, here's everything that you could imagine. And then we're constantly adding new things to that too. So it's great as like a refresher for like things you're not doing every day, but it's also good for when you hire new people or if you have turnover.
No doubt about it. If you want to scale, you got to document those processes, right? And if you want to improve as well. Transitioning just a little bit, Ashley, as you're buying lots of properties, lots of, different, are they all in the same town? Or are they scattered?
So they're all in Buffalo, New York. So most are in like the South towns, the rural area. And then there's a couple that are actually in the city.
Speak to, just like your future outlook, like what you're expecting over the next year. Are you still expecting to buy, like you have been, or more than normal, or not as much, and maybe some challenges you foresee?
I'm actually going to be doing a flip coming up that I should be closing on soon. I've decided that I'm not going to purchase any more rentals in New York State just because of the tenant landlord laws. And I just went through like a nightmare situation that's still going on, even after the tenant has moved out. So I think that just like seeing, there's also a new judge that was put in too, that's serving a 2-year term for evictions, and just like our experience with them in December, I don't want to deal with that. So I'm looking into Ohio and Pennsylvania as markets that I want to purchase a rental in for the coming year. And then in New York State, I'll just be sticking to flipping houses. Buffalo, like on Zillow.com, was the number one housing market 2 years in a row. So it's definitely great for flips. I've had success in that recently. So, and then adding probably maybe one more short-term rental this year. We have 2 cabins, this one that I'm sitting in, and then another A-frame cabin that have just done like better than we ever could have dreamed of. And we really want to get more focused on like making them even greater experiences and more amenities, things like that, and just adding more value to them to really increase that nightly rate. We did have 2 Airbnb arbitrages that were actually in one of the apartment complexes I managed. They did good at first. We started one in 2018, and it was us and one other Airbnb in the town. So there wasn't really any options to stay in. There's really no attraction. There's a couple ski resorts, but most people came to visit family, visit people in the nursing home, things like that. Had a couple traveling nurses, but they just kind of were breaking even or making a little bit of cash flow where they just weren't worth managing and operating anymore. So we ended up shutting those down in December. And now we have a lot more, energy and focus that our short-term rental manager can put on to our cabins instead of the arbitrage units.
How are you financing your deals now?
So I'm using a private money lender out of Seattle, Washington. So that's been my primary source for the flips. I also have 2 lines of credit that I use. Both are on investment properties, so they're commercial lines of credit. So I usually use those to make the purchase. And then depending what I'm doing with the deal, I'll refinance it, or I'll, when I sell it, I'll pay back my lines of credit. So that's pretty much my 2 primary things. And even before that, I had two other private money lenders that I used. So it was usually my lines of credit or, the private money lenders. I did use a hard money lender once, and it was an awful experience that I'm still scarred from, like, their process and like how they did not understand the closing in New York. Like, they were asking my attorneys what to do. So I think might be a little while before I actually go back to a hard money lender.
How did you develop those relationships?
Yeah, so the first one was just by talking about what I was trying to do. And then the second one, like the private money lender I use now, was I actually invested in one of his deals. I put some capital into a project. And so then when it came time for me to do my own first flip, I approached him and asked him. He taught me everything to do. So, should be a good investment.
What's a way you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours?
I would say, as far as my property management company, I think the biggest thing is, like, we kind of talked about the SOPs and, hiring virtual assistants. But I think that the biggest thing for me is having somebody manage my calendar. Like, I recently just started doing that, and also my emails too. So I read the book Buy Back Your Time. And I guess this is more for like personal, but I think it tremendously helps your business. So I hired a personal assistant to actually help with things on the personal side, because I have found that those are so much easier tasks to outsource than some of my business tasks. So I can focus more on business things than on having to do personal things. So I would say, like, the biggest thing I'm trying to implement is, outsourcing more of my personal tasks, things that need to be done. Like, something as simple as like making a dentist appointment. Like, I don't want to stop working for 5 minutes to like make the dentist appointment for myself, or, like scheduling podcast recordings or scheduling different things. So I would say that's like big thing, is like not only focus on what you can outsource for business, but also in your personal life. That's really helped me give myself a lot more quality time with your kids. Like, I was just listening to this other podcast that was talking about parenting and, how a lot of people have nannies or babysitters, but they still feel so overwhelmed with the house chores. So they're having somebody take care of the kids but they're still doing the dishes, the laundry, things like that. I look at it reverse of like, I'd rather be the ones playing with my kids and hanging out with them. So I want to outsource the other stuff. So just trying to look at it in different ways than what's been like the norm of like, you have to do everything.
Yes, that is life changing. I feel like there's a big roadblock or mental block there for most people. It's like, well, I know I want to outsource my email and calendar and a lot of those things, but I don't seem to apply those things in the house. I don't think about it in the home very often. We've hired just some young ladies over the years that are local to us here who have been so helpful, right? But
Yeah.
I stress to them almost what you said there early on. I say, I want my wife to be mom, right? I want you to take these things off of her that is taking her away from being mom. Yeah, it's a game changer in a massive way. So what about, as we're talking about that, what about some, how are you focused on, let's say, personal development or growth, and especially, while raising some young boys and having a demanding business and all that happening?
Yeah. So I actually joined an accountability challenge for health and fitness. And it actually ends up being all real estate investors that are in it. So I did 2 rounds of it, and each round is 6 months. So I've been in it for a year. But not only did I become like in better physical shape, but also just like the mental shift of like working out every day, walking. We had to get 10,000 steps every single day, of like having just like something to achieve every day. But I would say that was like something that has really, really helped me a lot, is instead of just, being in a real estate mastermind, which I think is amazing, any kind of group like that, but something else that I'm focused on to like kind of breathe a new life into me, instead of just real estate, real estate, real estate, but also having that real estate component. Like, we have the coolest group chat and, it's a mix of, funny things. It's a mix of working out. It's a mix of real estate. Like, what would you do in this? So it's definitely this, health and fitness challenge that I've been a part with, and we're just about to start. round three. So
That's awesome. Accountability. We got to have it. We got to have it. And you got to be proactive at finding it, right? And putting yourself in that. We mentioned, we talked about managing the home a little bit, but are you able to incorporate your boys at all in the business, or how are you teaching them to think this way, like as an entrepreneur, or, buying real estate?
yeah, there's actually an interview of my son with Kathy Fettke on YouTube somewhere, and it's her interviewing him. And he goes on and talks about how he wants to buy a house. He's going to rent it out, and he's not going to college because that's what he's going to do. And just like so he's 7, and he just has the whole plan laid out of like what he's going to do. And every year for Christmas, he asks for a house. He puts a house on his Christmas list so that he can rent it out and someone can pay him rent. So I feel like I need to get him a house pretty soon here. We actually did have one that someone was selling, and they were going to sell or finance it to us. And I was going to lend him the down payment, and he could go and, purchase it. We'd have to put in my name and stuff like that. But it ended up the house was actually on an Indian reservation. So you didn't actually own the land. It was just actually the house, and then you leased the land. So ended up not being a good deal, but I do still keep my eye. It was like a $20,000 house. So I do still keep my eye open for those little cheap deals that maybe come away. But him and his brother both invested some of their savings. They each gave $200 and invested into my flip that I recently did. And so they got their return on that, and they thought that was pretty awesome, and they regretted not investing more money. So little things like that. But the short-term rentals they're very involved with. They helped a lot with the setup for each, and they're always like listening and talking about what's going on with them, what's happening. Do we have guests there? They always want to know like how much money someone's paying to stay there. They're very interested in that part. And then at the 40-unit apartment complexes, they collect the quarters a lot. So they'll go in and collect quarters with the maintenance guy and go and deposit them to, learn that, and then they get paid a little.
That's fun. I love involving our kids in any way like that. So they just start thinking like that, right? So what are some of the most important metrics that you track, Ashley? It could be personally or professionally.
Health and fitness right now, every day. We're on a 3-week break right now, but every day it's tracking how many steps we take, how much protein we eat, what our workout was, and if we did work out. So that's like a big one for me right now, is this health and fitness journey. And it's just like been a big mental shift for me too. And then as far as the property management side, we're tracking how long work orders take. So how long are they staying open for? We're tracking vacancy rate. We're also tracking like increase in rental rates. Like what's the trend for, what units are renting for more? What are we able to increase more often? Is it 3 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms? Is it this layout, that layout? And then also just tracking my net worth every single month as to what's happening in the real estate market. What does it look like my properties are valued at? And then also looking at, other investments that I have to track my net worth. But right now, the property management metrics are kind of the biggest KPIs that we kind of follow and look at.
How do you track your net worth on a monthly basis? How do you get the values that fast and some of that process?
I'm actually using an app. It's called Monarch Money.
Monarch Money.
There it is. Yeah.
I've heard other people talk about that app and how they're tracking things.
Yeah. So I just started it basically the first of the year. I entered in all my stuff before the first of the year. But before that, I was using just Google spreadsheets to track. And then before that, I had used, it was another personal finance one I had used for a long time. And then they got bought out by Empower, I think it was. So,
okay. I know a lot of people talk about Rocket Money or something like that as well. I wondered how it compares to Monarch, but what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Partnerships. Yeah, partnerships. I've had 3 partners, and then I've also partnered with my brother and my sister in a deal. So that really has been the biggest thing. I think it would have been a really long time if I didn't get started, or if I wouldn't have had a partner. It would have taken me a lot longer to get started. And I think even in other businesses, like I opened a wine and liquor store. I probably wouldn't have done that if I didn't have my partner who had like the retail experience side of things. So definitely partnerships.
And how do you like to give back?
My biggest thing is I like to be more hands-on than actually like give money. So we donate money to the school and things like that, but it's more of being hands-on and helping someone with, obviously investing is a big thing, is, responding to as many messages as I can in my Bigger Pockets profile, things like that. But as far as volunteering, we do a lot of like hands-on volunteering community stuff.
Ashley, been a pleasure to meet you and have you on the show. Honored to get to know you a little bit and to help the listeners, man, get started, right? Take action and gain some confidence so they can go do this. And so how can they find you, learn more about your book, your YouTube channel? I know you're putting a ton of value into that as well. Where can they connect?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Wealth from Rentals. You can check out our YouTube channel at Real Estate Rookie. We're almost to 100,000 subscribers, so I'd love it if you guys would subscribe to it. We're also doing a new series called Rookie Resource, where I'm putting out a video talking about something very specific. Like we just did one on a unit information sheet. So it's basically a whole checklist of everything you should know about your property. So if something comes up along the way and you need the make or model to your washing machine or your dishwasher, you have it handy instead of having to ask your tenant for it, and you know where the water shut off, all these things that I didn't do when I first started. So we released one of those videos randomly, and it comes with a downloadable you can get to.
Awesome. That's a wrap, Ashley. That's the end of the show.